And moving on to the top focus story on Primetime Asia, Hong Kong authorities have confirmed that the deadly high-rise fire, which claimed the lives of at least 128 people, began on protective netting and the lower floors and spread rapidly then through inflammable styrofoam boards and bamboo scaffolding. Security Chief Chris Tang stated that the fire quickly ascended, fueled by burning debris. As of now, 5 individuals have been arrested, including 2 directors from Willpower Architects and 3 senior staff members from Prestige Construction and Engineering. Officials also revealed that fire alarms were malfunctioning during the incident and promised strict enforcement action. In response to the tragedy, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Hong Kong's Chief Executive John Lee have expressed their condolences, while a full criminal investigation is currently underway. Let's listen in to Hong Kong's Secretary and Director of Fire.
最初起火嘅位置係宏昌角低層外邊嘅嗰啲嘅圍網，其後咧係由於燃燒咗嗰啲發泡膠板，火勢迅速咧係向上蔓延，伸延到去多個嘅樓層，並喺短時間內咧係波及咗宏福苑其他6座嘅樓宇。大火咧係引燃咗貼喺嗰啲窗門上邊嘅發泡膠板，令到玻璃爆破，令到火勢咧係急速增強，並且迅速蔓延到咧入到室內。要強調，如果用直升機喺呢個火警裏邊掟水彈，如果喺個樓宇嘅上空投擲水彈，啲水係唔會係不會係會落入個火場裏邊，只會淋咗去一個大廈嘅外。
Let's now welcome Satoru Nagao, who is a fellow at the Hudson Institute, joining us live from Tokyo. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Nagao, and thanks for joining us here at NewsX World. Now, some of the causes have started coming out, including that of the use of bamboo scaffolding and Chinese nets. But let's talk about a larger question. Is the fire and the consequences of it and the rising death toll posing a threat now for China's grip on the city, especially when local elections are upcoming in December?
My election itself, in case of China, there is no problem even in Hong Kong, because recently there is no criticize against a government side, so that's why this is not affected. But in this case, the security level is a matter, because if the bamboo stage is the cause of the problem to spread the fire, this is not only the reason because the cause bamboo itself do not create the fire. So there's a possibility the cigarette the workers are using, and it could be something cause of fire. After that, this bamboo stage is the cause of spread rapidly. So that's why the what is the rule in the Hong Kong, because the crisis management level or safety standard, these are the job of the local government, and after that, of course, a company should follow this. These are the one by one they need to check. And in this case, that's why if the governmental side has some problem of the safety measures, of course, there's a possibility it will be a risk for the government. But under the China's rule, one country, one system rule currently, instead of the 2 systems. So that's why, in this case, election is not meaning there is a chance to criticize the government. So that's why the election itself is not related with this issue, I think.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us now here on NewsX World. And with that, viewers, we shift our focus. Now, India's Defense Secretary Rajesh Kumar Singh has said that India will continue defense cooperation with Russia while steadily growing partnerships with the United States. Speaking at FICCI's 98th annual general meeting, he emphasized that India follows strategic autonomy, sourcing equipment from multiple countries, including the United States, Russia and France. Singh further noted that over 1.33 lakh crore Indian rupees have been spent this year, with nearly 88% involving domestic suppliers, and that future foreign purchases will mostly involve joint production within India. The leader also highlighted the ministry's plan to seek a 20% increase in the defense budget to meet India's modernization needs. The focus remains on boosting domestic production while maintaining selective imports and international cooperation. Madhav Nalapat, who is the director of editorial at TSG, is now joining us live from New Delhi. I extend you a very warm welcome, sir, here at NewsX World, and thank you for joining us. Now, India has clearly maintained its autonomy and its position of siding with peace, not being neutral or indifferent, but continuing to side with peace.
Look, I'd like to point out to a facet of the visit of President Putin to India. He's a welcome guest. He's a very welcome guest, and he's going to be treated with full honors as befits the head of state of a great power. India, Russia, China, and the US are the four great powers of the world, and two of them are now meeting when President Putin comes to India and meets Prime Minister Modi. So I want to say one thing, and that is, yes, defense cooperation is important. Russians are very, very consistent in their defense equipment supply to India. They don't have the problem which you have with American equipment, that one day some sanction may come, someday some political wind may blow elsewhere, and so as a consequence, supplies are temporarily or even permanently cut off. And that is, let me emphasize the question of peace. Don't forget, in 2022 itself, when the Ukraine war started, in the first few weeks of the Ukraine war, Prime Minister Modi, in the presence of President Putin, said that this is the era of peace. It's not an era of war. So my own view is that President Putin coming will be a very good opportunity for Prime Minister to reinforce his message of peace. And I can tell you one thing very clearly. I think it's very important for Ukraine to ensure that it stops fighting, for a simple reason that, this chance of peace in 2022, there was a chance for peace. It was completely rejected by the Ukrainians because of the, persuasion of the Americans and the Europeans. Now the Americans are separate. The Europeans are the only ones who are now pushing this war. But the Prime Minister is definitely certain to mention once again, this is the era of peace. And as someone who has got high regard for Ukrainian people, I would say that the country has suffered enough as a result of this terrible conflict, and they should accept the consequences of it, and they should move on hopefully to a future of prosperity. I'm very, very sure that Prime Minister Modi will be talking about peace. Yes, defense is there, no question about it. Russia cooperation technology is there, very important indeed, because technology is a key driver of modern warfare, and victory or defeat can depend on the superiority or otherwise of your technology. But one thing I can be very certain, Prime Minister Modi will, either publicly or privately, reinforce his message of peace that he gave in 2022. At that point in time, the Ukrainians did not accept it. I think President Putin, in whose presence he gave it, was ready to accept it. And what has happened? Ukrainians have lost more territory. They have suffered horrible casualties. The whole world has been suffering because of this Russia-Ukraine war. So I certainly hope that Ukraine grabs at the opportunity offered to it by the mediation of President Trump and opts for peace on the terms, frankly, which the ground reality will basically settle. And that reality is, very frankly, the ground reality is the Russians have only taken over more territory, that the Ukrainians have only lost territory, they've lost lives. And how many lives are going to be sacrificed for this senseless, unwinnable war on the Ukrainian side? So I want to say, I'm very sure our Prime Minister will reinforce his message of peace. I needed to say that because we've all been talking about defense and weapons and everything, but nobody is talking about that very important point made by Prime Minister Modi in the starting weeks of this horrible conflict, that this is the time of peace, the era of peace, not the era of war. And he said that in the presence of Vladimir Putin. So I'm very certain that message will also be repeated and will be further reinforced by the Prime Minister. And of course, President Putin will be willing to listen to him and end the conflict on the terms that he's already obviously said, which is basically control of the Donbass. And I think, frankly, rather than have it taken away by force, it is better to cede it in an honorable manner, relatively honorable manner. And I hope and pray that this time the Prime Minister Modi's efforts at peace will succeed, although I very much doubt it, unfortunately, given the drive of Europeans to ensure, the EU, to ensure that this war continues and more Ukrainian lives, more Russian lives are sacrificed. Thank you.
Mr. Nalapat, I'll just take another short question before I let you go, and that's about the procurement of S-400s. Now, is India likely to seek negotiations on that front, given that the systems did exceedingly well in the Operation Sindoor?
Look, S-400 is a formidable defense, no question about it. I think the Russians have perfected an even better defense system, the S-500, and I'm very certain that co-production is probably something which the Russians will eventually agree to, because today Russia has very few friends left in the world who have stood by it through good times and bad times, and these are not the best of times for Russia. India is among that very small and frankly that ever shortening list of reliable friends of Russia. So I do feel that the Prime Minister is going to make a push for Make in India as well. For example, the BrahMos missile, a formidable weapon, and the missile was made jointly by Russia and by India. I think there's a lot of scope for two countries to work jointly to build up formidable weapon systems and to build up formidable new technologies that, as I said, will make all the difference between winning a war and losing a war. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Nalapat, for joining us here at NewsX World and sharing your opinion. And with that, viewers, let's move on to news from Pakistan, where now